Hello everyone, welcome to the video lecture on discrete logarithm and its applications. Outline of this video: initially we'll study what is discrete logarithm, next few of its applications like Diffie-Hellman key exchange protocol, next attack on Diffie-Hellman key exchange protocol, that is man in the middle attack, another application which makes use of discrete logarithm, that is Elgamal encryption, finally Elgamal signature. Initially, we'll go through what is discrete logarithm. Consider the finite multiplicative group Z star P on multiplication modulo P where P is prime. Let G be the generator of the group, that is, the successive powers of G generate all the elements of the group. So, G to the power 1 mod P, the result will be there in Z star P. Similarly, G to the power 2 mod P will be there in Z star P up to G to the power P minus 1 mod P will be there in Z star P. Now let X be an element in the set 0, 1, 2 till P minus 2. The function y is equal to G to the power X mod P is referred to as modular exponentiation with base G and modulus P. The inverse operation is expressed as x is equal to log y to the base G mod P. Now this is referred to as discrete logarithm. Now discrete logarithm is the inverse function of modular exponentiation. That is, in modular exponentiation, given gx p value, you can find y value which is one of the value from the set z star p. So your inverse function is nothing but you need to find x value such that given y, g and p value. Okay. So how did we get this inverse function? We'll see that. So given the modular exponentiation formula, apply log on both the sides. So it will be log y is equal to x log g mod p, as you can see here. Now let me get log g to the left hand side. So it will be log y divided by log g mod p is equal to x. We know that log y divided by log g is nothing but log y to the base g mod p is equal to x, as you can see it here. So discrete logarithm is the inverse function of modular exponentiation. So it involves computing x given the values of p, g and y such that it belongs to z star p. Next we will go through this diagram to see how to compute discrete logarithm. So in this diagram we explain how to compute discrete logarithm in z star 29 on multiplication modulo 29 with g is equal to 2, that is generator is equal to 2 and p value is given as 29. So given a y value that belongs to z star 29, I need to find what is the x value. So those x values are nothing but the inverses. So the possible y values are ranging from 1 to p minus 1. So it is nothing but 1 to 29 minus 1, that is 28. I need to find all the inverses. So the inverse is found using the formula log y to the base 2. 2 is the reason because g is equal to 2 mod 29. But if I apply directly to this formula, I won't get the inverse. So I need to use modular exponentiation formula. So what is that formula? X is equal to g to the power x is x mod p is equal to y. Okay. So initially I'll take x is equal to 1. So 2 to the power 1 mod 29 is equal to 2. So this 2 is nothing but the y value, and to the power exponentiation value is there, right? That is the x value. So for the x value 1, the y value obtained is 2. That is nothing but the inverse of 2 is 1. So I have to go to the table, go for the row 2 and fill its inverse as 1. Similarly, if I take again g to the power 2 mod 29 is equal to 4, that is 2 to the power 2 mod 29 is equal to 4. Now 4 is the y value and its inverse is nothing but 2, that is g to the power x, x value is 2. So I have to go to the row 4 and fill its inverse. X value is nothing but 2. So let me take one more example. 2 to the power 11 is equal to 18 it is written. So it is nothing but 2 to the power 11 on mod 29 you will get 18. It means that y value is 18, x value is 11. So inverse of 18 is nothing but 11. So you can see in the row 18 you have 11. So you can see in this cycle you have taken x value ranging from 1, 2, 3. It goes up till 28. Okay. Similarly the y values you can see it covers up all the values from 1 till 28. As we can see here 2 is there, 4, 8, 16, 3, 12. So every value is there. Okay. So it covers up. See you can see 1, 2, 3. So it covers up every value. So you can see in the y value in the table you have from 1 to 28. Similarly in the x value also you can see all the values ranging from 1 to 28. Okay. So these are nothing but, now this is the y value, this is the inverse of it. So as you can see we cannot find the inverse, we have to use the tabular form in order to compute the discrete logarithm. So let us consider one more example. So compute discrete logarithm in z star 11 on multiplication modulo 11 for g is equal to 2. So how to find this table? So first we should be sure of what are the possible y values. It is always ranging from 1 to p minus 1. So in this case p is equal to 11. So 11 minus 1 is 10. So y values will be ranging from 1 to 10. Okay. I need to find x values. How to find the x values? So let me take x values from 1 to 10 and compute what will be possible x value for each of the y value. So initially I will start x equal to 1. So 2 to the power 1 mod 11 I will get equal to 2. Now this is y. So for the y value 2, the inverse is x value is 1. So I will go to the row 2 and fill the x value as 1. Similarly, for x is equal to 2, 2 to the power 2 mod 11 is equal to 4. So I have to go for 4 and fill it with 2. Similarly, 2 cube is 8, 8 mod 11 is 8. So for y value 8, the inverse is x is equal to 3. So 8 is filled with 3. Similarly, 2 to the power 4 mod 11 is 5. So for y value 11, x is 4. Y value 11, x is 4. 2 to the power 5 mod 11 is equal to 10. So for 10, the x value is 5. Similarly, we need to do up till 10. So 2 to the power 10 mod 11 is 1. So for y value 1, the x value is 10. Okay. So this represents for the given y value what is the inverse value, that is nothing but x value. But using this formula we cannot directly find the what is the x value. We need to go for the tabular form. We have to compute the discrete logarithm table and then we can tell what is the y value for the corresponding x value. Directly we cannot find, given a y value, what is the x value. So for cryptographic applications, the value of P and G are very large. So it won't be a small value, it will be a very large value. As the values are large, the table size also will increase. The computation time for performing modular exponentiation using square and multiply method is log P. As we have seen in the RSA chapter, when we apply the square and multiply method, the time requirement or the time computation time is log P. To compute discrete logarithm is to prepare a table which pairs each x with the corresponding g to the power x mod p. So the computation cost of this table approach is proportional to p. That is nothing but based on the value of p, there will be number of rows. So for the table approach, the computation time is, or the computation cost is p. So there are several attempts to speed up the discrete logarithm problem, such as Pollard row algorithm and Indus calculus method. The time complexity of these method is big O of root p. So the advantage of this discrete logarithm is it is the one-way property of the modular exponentiation and easy to compute but hard to invert. That makes it easy of such great use in cryptography. So the main advantage is it has a one-way property. It means that we can compute the modular exponentiation, but we cannot compute discrete logarithm. That is nothing but the inverse of it. Okay, so that makes it difficult. So it is great using cryptography. For the reason is that you can encrypt the message using modular exponentiation, but if someone gets the message, it is very difficult for them to guess what is the key. Okay, so that is the great advantage. So there are numerous applications of the discrete logarithm ranging from online secret key agreement to encryption and digital signatures. Next, let us consider one of the application which makes use of discrete logarithm is the Diffie-Hellman key exchange protocol. Now this protocol was published in 1976 by Diffie and Hellman, through which basically the idea of private key and public key came into existence. So let us consider two parties A and B that need to agree upon a shared secret key for the duration of the current session. Okay, so there are two parties A and B which need to generate a shared secret key which is used for the entire duration for the communication purpose. So Diffie-Hellman can be used for this key agreement, that is nothing but the generation of key. So before we go through how the communication or exchange of key happens, we need to assume that both A and B knows two values, that is P and G, where P is the prime number or modulus and G is the generator value. Okay, so both A and B knows a common two values, that is P and G. So initially A chooses a random number A which can range from 1 to P minus 1, and it computes a partial key called as G to the power A mod P. Now G to the power A mod P, whatever value computed, is sent to B. On receiving this, what B does is it chooses a random number B which can range from 1 to P minus 1, and it computes a value called as G to the power B mod P, and this is sent to A. Now at this point, both A and B will be having G to the power A mod P and G to the power B mod B. Both the parties will be having. At this point now both will compute. What they will compute? For example, A will compute, it will get G to the power B mod P to the power A it will do, because A is known only to party A. So it will take this message, this value, that is G to the power B mod P, and power A it will do. So that is nothing but G to the power AB mod P. Similarly, in B's side, it will take this first message, whatever received message, to the power B it will do. Now this B value is known only to party B. So it will compute G to the power A mod P whole to the power B. That is nothing but G to the power A mod P. Now both are same value. Now this value is called as shared secret key. Now this is also called as a session key. Now this key is finally used for the current entire session for encrypting the message and decrypting the message. Okay, so in this case also you need to see that now this A value is nothing but the private key of A, and G to the power A mod P is the public key. It is also called as the partial key of A. Similarly, B is called the private key of B, and also G to the power B mod P is called as the public key of B, or it is also called as partial key of B. Okay, now using the public and private key, that is the public key of B and private key of A, we compute the shared secret key. Similarly, here the public key of A and the private key of B, we compute the common shared secret key. Now for the entire session, this shared common secret key is used by the two communicating parties, and also we need to know that the shared secret key is not communicated over the line, it is individually computed. Only the partial key is communicated over the communication line. So let us consider one example. Compute Diffie-Hellman partial and secret keys where P is equal to 11, G is equal to 2, A is equal to 2 and B is equal to 3. Now P is the prime number and G is the generator, which is common for both the parties A and B. Now A is the random number chosen by A, B is the random number chosen by B, such that it should be ranging from 1 to P minus 1. So in this case it is 1 to 10. So the condition holds, and A indicates the private key of user A and B indicates the private key of user B. Now let us consider initially the partial key, because in order to compute secret key, first we require partial key. So initially we will compute the partial key of A. So how to compute the partial key of A? That is G to the power A mod P. G is equal to 2, A is equal to 2. So 2 to the power 2 is 4, 4 mod 11 is 4. So this is the partial key of A. So that let us indicate that as KA. Next we'll compute the partial key of B. So how to compute partial key of B? It is G to the power B mod P. G is equal to 2, B is equal to 3. So 2 to the power 3 mod 11 is 8. Okay, so let us indicate it as KB. So K indicates the partial key of A, KB indicates the partial key of B. Next we'll compute the, next both the parties need to compute the secret key. So how to compute the secret key? By A, it is nothing but KB, that is G to the power B mod P whole to the power A mod P. So what is G to the power B mod P? It is 8. 8 to the power A. What is A? 2. So 8 is 64. 64 mod 11 is equal to 9. Now this is the secret key that is computed by A. Now coming to B. B need to compute the secret key. So it will be taking G to the power A mod P whole to the power B. Okay. So what is G to the power A mod P? It is 4. 4 to the power B. B is equal to 3. So 4 cube mod 11, that is nothing but 64 mod 11 is equal to 9. So the secret key computed by A and B should be same. So in this case it is 9. So for the further communication between A and B, it uses 9 as the shared secret key. Let us consider one more example. Compute Diffie-Hellman partial and secret keys where P is equal to 131, G is equal to 2, A is equal to 24 and B is equal to 7. So when we choose A and B, it should be ranging from 1 to P minus 1. Okay, the condition satisfies here. So A is the random number chosen by A and B is the random number chosen by B. So first let us compute the partial key. So the partial key of A is nothing but G to the power A mod P. G is equal to 2. So 2 to the power 24 mod P is 131. So directly we cannot do the computation, so we'll split it. So I'll write it as 2 to the power 6 mod 131 to the power 4. So 6 4s are 24. So this is how I split it. Okay. So let us consider what is 2 to compute what is 2 to the power 6 mod 131. That is nothing but 64. Next we have to compute 64 to the power 4 mod 131. That gives us 46. Now 46 is nothing but the partial key of A. Now this is sent to B. Okay. B keeps it as it is initially. Now it will compute the partial key of B. So what is the partial key of B? That is G to the power B mod P. So G is 2, B is nothing but 17. So 2 to the power 17 mod 131. Again we'll split it. So we'll split it as 2 to the power 4 mod 131 to the power 4. So 4 4s are 16. So it should be 17. So again I'll take one more split, that is 2 to 2 mod 131. So 2 to the power 4 mod 131 is nothing but 16. Again I have to do power of 4. So it is 16 power 4 mod 131. That is this whole calculation. Okay, into 2. Why 2? Because 2 to the power 2 mod 131 is 2 itself. So we have taken just as 2 whole mod 131. Now 16 to the power 4 mod 131 is nothing but 36. 36 into 2 mod 131 is 72. Now this is the partial key of B. Now this is sent to A. Next we need to compute the secret key. So coming to the secret key. Secret key of computed by A is G to the power B mod P whole to the power A. You know that G to the power B mod P is 72 from the previous slide. Okay, to the power 24 mod 131. So we'll split it as 72 to the power 3 mod 131 whole to the power 8 mod 131. So 72 cube mod 131 is 29. 29 to the power 8 mod 131, again it can be split as 29 to the power 4 mod 131 whole square mod 131. So its value is 12. 12 square mod 131 is equal to 13. Now this is the shared secret key that is computed by A. Now the secret key computed by B is G to the power A mod P whole to the power B mod P. So we know that G to the power A mod P is equal to 46. 46 to the power 17 mod 131 we need to calculate. So we'll split it as 46 to the power 4 mod 131 whole to the power 4. 4 is 16. So 1 is left. So we'll compute it as 46 mod 131. Now 46 to the power 4 mod 131 is 7. 7 whole thing is 7. So 7 to the power 4 mod 131 we need to calculate. Again 46 mod 131 is 46 itself. Okay, 7 to the power 4 mod 131 is 43 into 46 mod 131, that is equal to 13. So as you can see that it has computed the same value. Now for the further session, for the entire session it will be using this key, that is the value 13 has its key. Next we'll go through computational Diffie-Hellman problem. So in the Diffie-Hellman protocol, the partial keys G to the power A mod P and G to the power B mod P are sent in clear text format. So can an eavesdropper with the knowledge of the partial keys, that is nothing but G to the power A mod P and G to the power B mod P, and the public parameters P and G, deduce the common secret key, that is G to the power A mod P, derived by A and B. Now this problem is referred to as computational Diffie-Hellman problem. So one way to solve the computational Diffie-Hellman problem is to obtain A and B from the partial keys G to the power A mod P and G to the power B mod P. But as we know, this entitles computing the discrete logarithm, a problem that is computationally infeasible in case where P is sufficiently large. We know that computing discrete logarithm is we need to generate a table for whatever P value we take, which is computationally infeasible as the P value is larger. Next we'll go through man-in-the-middle attack on Diffie-Hellman protocol. So as you can see in the diagram, there are three entities A, B and C, where C is an attacker. So initially A will choose a random number A and he computes G to the power A mod B. So in the message he will send the public parameters GP and also the computed value G to the power A mod B. Now this message is intercepted by the attacker, that is C, and what he does is, since he receives GP which is sent in the clear text format, he will choose a random number C and computes G to the power C mod P. Now he will send the message to B. It contains GP and the computed value G to the power C mod P. On receiving that, what B does is, it chooses a random number B and it computes G to the power B mod P. Now in the next message it will send the computed value, that is G to the power B mod P, actually to A. Now again that is intercepted by C, and what it does is, it keeps this message as it is, and it previously computed G to the power C mod P is sent back to A. Now at this point A will be having G to the power A mod P and G to the power C mod P. B will be having G to the power C mod P and G to the power B mod P. But C will be having G to the power C mod P, G to the power A mod P and G to the power B mod P. So at this point all the three parties will compute now the common shared secret key. Now this will compute, it receives G to the power C mod P. So to the power A it does, so that is nothing but G to the power AC mod P. Now B, it has received G to the power C mod P whole to the power B it does, that is nothing but G to the power BC mod P. What attacker C does is, he computes two common shared secret key, that is nothing but G to the power AC mod P and G to the power BC mod P. So once this is done, there is a common shared secret key between A and C. There is a common shared secret key between B and C. So whenever A sends a message to B, it is intercepted by C. It decrypts the message and again encrypt using G to the power BC mod B, and it sends to B. On receiving it, it thinks that it has received from A, but actually it has received from C. Again, when B sends a message to A, it is intercepted again by C. Once it is decrypted, again it is encrypted using the common shared secret key between A and C, that is G to the power AC mod B, and it is sent to A. So every message that is sent from A to B or B to A, it is intercepted and it is read by C. Again it is encrypted and sent back to the other party. So this is how actively a man in the middle attack is performed. So the main drawback of this attack is nothing but the authentication is not done before sending a key. So that is the main drawback. Finally, the choice of modulus P and the generator G plays a very important role in Diffie-Hellman key exchange protocol. The secrets involved in Diffie-Hellman key exchange includes the private keys A and B and the shared secret key G to the power A mod P. To maximize the chance of an attacker guessing any of these secrets, it is desirable that they be chosen from a large pool of integers as possible. The number of distinct private keys and the number of distinct public keys are both upper bounded by the cardinality of Z star P. So this is P minus 1 for prime and it is less than P minus 1 for non-prime P. But we go for P is equal to prime. So the possible choices are up till P minus 1. So to maximize the security, it would be desirable to have as large possible value of P. So finally, by choosing G to be the generator of Z star P, the space of possible public keys is large, which is equal to P minus 1. We next explore an attack that may be possible for a poor choice of P. So let us consider P is equal to 29 and G is equal to 2 in Z star 29. Now suppose one of the communicating parties, say A in the Diffie-Hellman key exchange protocol, chooses its private key A is equal to 7, that is random number chosen by A is equal to 7. So the corresponding public key will be G to the power A mod P. G is equal to 2, A is equal to 7, so 2 to the power 7 mod 29, we will get it as 12. So we next note that the subgroup of Z star 29 generated by 12 is G to the power 7 mod 29, G to the power 14 mod 29, G to the power 21 mod 29, lastly G to the power 28 mod 29, which is a set of 4 elements 12, 28, 17, 1. That is nothing but G to the power 7 mod 29 is 12, G to the power 14 mod 29 is 28, G to the power 21 mod 29 is 17 and G to the power 28 mod 29 is 1. So we now claim that regardless of the value of B's private key, the common secret that they compute will be restricted to an element in the above set. It means that now this is the public key of A. Now irrespective of the private key that is chosen by B, okay, it will be one of the values from this set. So it is very easy to compute the common shared secret key. We will see how it is possible. So here we will consider a variable B, where B is equal to 4i plus j, where j is equal to B mod 4. So the common secret key computed by A and B is nothing but, we know the formula, G to the power AB mod P. So P is nothing but 28. So we know what is A. A is nothing but 7, but we need to prove that your B value is nothing but either of the one value. So we'll see in this equation how it is possible. So G to the power AB mod 28. So A is substituted by 7. So we know that B is nothing but 4 into I plus j. So I have substituted same thing, mod 29. So if I calculate this one, so it will be 7 4s are 28, 28i. So it is written as G to the power 28 whole to the power I mod 29. Similarly, G to the power 7 into j mod 29. So it is G to the power 7j mod 29. So G to the power 28 mod 29 is equal to 1 by the Fermat's theorem. Fermat's theorem says that g to the power p minus 1 mod p is equal to 1. So g to the power 28 mod 29 is equal to 1. So this whole thing becomes 1. So 1 into any other parameter is nothing but that parameter. So it is g to the power 7j mod 29. So g to the power 7j mod 29 is an element in 12, 28, 17, 1. That is nothing but it will be g to the power 7 into 1 mod 29. That is nothing but g to the power 7 mod 29. If I take j is equal to 2, it will be g to the power 14 mod 29. If I take j is equal to 3, it will be g to the power 21 mod 29. If I take j value is equal to 4 and g to the power 28 mod 29. I cannot go beyond that. Okay. So either of the one value, each of the value will lead to these values, that is 12, 28, 17, 1. Hence the common secret is restricted to an element in 12, 28, 17, 1 for any choice of B's private key. So the B's private key would lead any of these values. So in the above example, the common secret computed by A and B is a member of a small subgroup, so may be easily guessed. So such an attack is referred to as small subgroup attack. Next we'll go through one more application which makes use of discrete logarithm, that is Elgamal encryption. As the name indicates, the encryption makes use of public key and the decryption makes use of private key. So let's see how it works. So Elgamal encryption uses a private large prime number p and a generator g in z star p multiplication modulus p. So an Elgamal private key is an integer a such that a is in the range 1 to p minus 1. The corresponding public key is the triplet pg and alpha, where alpha is the encryption key calculated from alpha is nothing but g to the power a mod p. Okay. So your private key is nothing but a random number that is chosen from 1 to a value chosen within the range 1 to p minus 1, and your public key is the triplet pg and alpha. Alpha is nothing but g to the power a mod p. So to encrypt a message m less than p minus 1, so you need to keep in mind your message always should be less than p minus 1. To be sent to A, B does the following. Now B want to send the message to A. Now what B does, we'll see. Now he chooses a random number r. So this random number r is chosen by B, which is within the range 1 to p minus 1, such that r is relatively prime to p minus 1. That is r is co-prime to p minus 1. That is GCD of r and p minus 1 is equal to 1 you should get. Next he computes one component, that is C1, where C1 is equal to g to the power r mod p. R is nothing but the random number chosen by B. So it takes g to the power r mod p. Now this is called as C1. Now he uses alpha from A's public key. So A's public key comprises pg and alpha. It chooses alpha from A's public key to compute one more component, that is C2. So what is C2? It is the message m into alpha to the power the random number r whole mod p. Now this is C2. Now he sends the ciphertext as a combination of both C1 and C2 to A. So C1 comma C2, this whole thing is called a ciphertext which is sent by B to A. So on receiving this, it decrypts the ciphertext. A uses its private key alpha and computes the following. Okay. Its private key A and computes the following. So how it computes the message, that is C1, which is the part of your ciphertext, C1 to the power minus A, that is the private key of A, into C2 mod P. On doing this, we will get the message. So we will see how decryption will recover the original message. So decryption formula is given by C1 to the power minus A into C2 mod P. So what is C1? C1 is nothing but g to the power r mod P. So you have seen that C1 is nothing but g to the power r mod P. Okay, whole to the power minus A. That is what written here. Now what is C2? C2 is nothing but m into alpha r mod P. Now that is substituted here. Then whole mod P is there. So g to the power r mod p to the power minus a can be written as g to the power minus ar mod p. Again, coming to what is alpha? Alpha is nothing but g to the power a mod p whole to the power r. Now this can be written as g to the power ar mod p. So that is written here. Okay. Again, this is splitted. We have multiplied here. So it is m into mod p, that is written here. Again, g to the power ar mod p is written here. So finally, after this, you can see that this is g to the power minus ar, so this is g to the power ar, so I can cancel both the things. So what is left? So we are left with m mod p. Okay, since m is less than p, that is what we have considered initially, your message should be less than p minus 1, so obviously m mod p will give us m. Now m is nothing but the message. So unlike with RSA encryption, ciphertext is now twice the size of the original text. Okay, that is nothing but, you can see there is m multiplied by something, so it doubles the size of the message in the cipher text. Now let us consider an example. A block of plain text m is equal to 4 has to be encrypted. Assume p is equal to 11, g is equal to 2, recipient's private key a is equal to 3, and sender b chooses a random integer r is equal to 5. Perform Elgamal encryption and decryption. So initially we need to compute the public key. So the public key of the receiver comprises of P, G and alpha, where alpha is called as the encryption key. Okay, so if A and B are the two communicating parties, now A is the receiver we have taken to assumption and B is the sender of the message. So receiver's encryption key we need to calculate, that is alpha. Alpha is equal to g to the power a mod p. So what is g? G is equal to 2. 2 to the power a is equal to 3. So it is 2 to the power 3 mod p is equal to 11, which gives us 8. So 8 is the encryption key of A, who is the receiver. Now B need to compute two components, that is C1 and C2, that is the ciphertext, because B is sending a message to A now. Okay. So in order to since this is a public parameter, this is known to B also. So B knows P, G and alpha as well. Okay. So it has to compute now C1 and C2. So C1 is nothing but g to the power r mod p, where r is a random number chosen by B itself. So r is taken as 5 here. So it is 2 to the power 5 mod 11, which is equal to 10. Again, it computes the component C2. C2 is nothing but m into m is nothing but the message. The plain text m is called as a message. M into alpha r. Alpha is nothing but 8. 8 to the power 5 mod p. That gives us 7. Now your ciphertext comprises of C1, C2, that is nothing but 10, 7. Now 10, 7 is sent to A now. Now A need to use C1 and C2 and need to retrieve back the original message 4. So decryption formula is m is equal to C1 to the power minus A, where A is the private key of A, into C2 mod P. So what is C1? C1 is 10. So 10 to the power minus 3 into C2. What is C2? 7 mod P is nothing but 11. Okay. So 10 to the power minus 3 can be written as 1 by 10 to the power 3. Okay. So this can be written as 1 by 10 to the power 3 into 7 mod 11. Okay. Now I will take mod 11 inside. So it will be 1 by 10 to the power 3 mod 11 into 7 whole mod 11. So next I need to compute 10 to the power 3 mod 11. So on computation of 10 to the power 3 mod 11 is nothing but 10 itself. So it will be 1 by 10. So this whole thing will lead to 1 by 10 into 7 whole mod 11. So 1 by 10 can be written as 10 to the power minus 1. Okay. It is 10 to the power minus 1. 10 to the power minus 1 into 7 mod 11. Okay, I'll take mod 11 inside, so it will be 10 to the power minus 1 mod 11 into 7 whole mod 11. So this is nothing but I need to find what is the inverse of 10 on mod 11. Okay, so the inverse of 10 on mod 11 is nothing but 10 itself. That is 10 into 10 is 100. 100 mod 11 will fetch me 1 as the remainder. Okay, so if I get remainder as 1, it means that it is the inverse. So the inverse of 10 on mod 11 is 10 itself. So this whole thing becomes 10. So 10 into 7 is 70. 70 mod 11 fetches me 4, which is equivalent to the original message that is sent by B. Okay, so thus A recovers the original message 4 using decryption. Next, we'll consider one more example. A block of plain text M is equal to 75 has to be encrypted. Assume P is equal to 131, G is equal to 2, recipient's private key A is equal to 97. Sender B chooses a random integer R is equal to 33. Perform Elgamal encryption and decryption. So here B wants to send a message to A. So B performs encryption and A performs the decryption. Okay. So before we perform encryption decryption, we need to see some of the factors. So the first one is the message M. Now your message M should be less than P minus 1. So P minus 1 is 130. So 75 is less than 130. So the condition holds. Second condition is that the private key chosen. The private key chosen also should be less than P minus 1. So 97 is less than 130. So the condition holds. The last one is the random integer R is equal to 33. Now this should be relatively prime with P minus 1. So P minus 1 is 130. So whether 33 is relatively prime to 130, that is nothing but GCD of 33 comma 131, whether it is equal to 1. Yes, it is equal to 1. So all the three condition holds. Then you can perform the encryption and decryption. So first compute the public key of the receiver. It comprises of three parameters P, G and alpha, where alpha is the encryption key. So it is computed as G to the power A mod P. So G is 2 and A is 97. So it is 2 to the power 97 mod 131, which gives us value 14. Next, sender B needs to compute the ciphertext. Ciphertext comprises of two components C1 and C2. So C1 is equal to G to the power R mod P. R random number chosen is 33. So it is 2 to the power 33 mod 131, which gives us 103. Next, compute C2. C2 is nothing but the message M into the encryption key. A's encryption key alpha to the power R mod P. So M is given as 75. 75 into alpha is 14. 14 to the power 33 mod 131, which gives us 51. Next, in the ciphertext C1 and C2 is sent to A. Now A need to perform decryption. So the decryption is given by M is equal to, M is nothing but the message. Okay, original message is equal to C1 to the power minus A into C2 mod P. So what is C1? C1 is 103. So it is 103 to the power 97 A value. That is the private key of A into 51. So that is nothing but C2. C2 is nothing but 51. So into 51 mod 131. Now 103 to the power minus 97 can be written as the inverse. That is 1 by 103 to the power 97. So that is what here it is written, and also you get mod 131 inside. So it will be 1 by 103 to the power 97 mod 131 into 51 whole mod 131. So next we'll compute what is 103 to the power 97 mod 131. So that will get value as 95. So it will be 1 by 95 into 51 mod 131. Okay. So 1 by 95 can be written as 95 to the power minus 1 into 51 mod 131. Okay, I'll get mod 131 inside. So it will be 95 to the power minus 1 mod 131 into 51 mod 131. So that is nothing but we need to find here what is the inverse of 95 on mod 131. Okay, so the inverse of 95 on mod 131 is 40. That is 95 into 40 mod 131. I'll get remainder equal to 1. Okay, so the inverse of 95 is 40. So I'll substitute this whole thing by 40. So it will be 40 into 51 mod 131. So 40 into 51 mod 131 gives us 75, which is our original message. So there are some precautions to be followed in the use of Elgamal encryption. That is, the same random number should not be used again by the encrypting party. So if there are two party A and B want to communicate with A, if B does the encryption, then he shouldn't choose the same random number for encrypting different messages. Now suppose the two messages M and M dash are encrypted using the random number R, that is the same random number. Then the ciphertext corresponding to the message will be, for the first message, the ciphertext will be C1, C2, which is nothing but G to the power R mod P, which is C1. C2 is nothing but M into alpha R mod P. So this is the ciphertext of first message. The ciphertext of the second message will be C1 dash indicates the second message ciphertext, that will be G to the power R mod P, since the same random number R is used, and C2 dash will be M dash, that is for the second message, into alpha R is same mod P. Okay, so these are the two ciphertext for the two different message M and M dash where same R is used, that is the same random number is used. Now consider an eavesdropper who has seen both the pairs of ciphertext. He has both the pairs of ciphertext. In addition, the eavesdropper also happens to know the first plain text, that is he knows M. He knows M, he knows C1, C2, he knows C1 dash and C2 dash. Then he can obtain the value of M dash, that is nothing but the second plain text as follows. Okay, so now the attacker has the message, first message, he has C1, C2, he has C1 dash, C2 dash, how he can obtain M dash. So using a simple formula, that is M into C2 dash into C2 dash to the power minus 1, that is inverse of C2, and mod P. So M into C2 dash. So what is C2 dash? M dash into alpha R mod P. So same thing is written here, M dash into alpha R mod P. Next, C2 inverse. So what is C2? M into alpha R mod P. So M into alpha R mod P whole to the power minus 1, which indicates inverse, and mod P. Okay, so I'll take everything outside, so it will be M into M dash, so it written M into M dash into alpha R, so alpha R is written here, into M to the power minus 1. Okay, so into M to the power minus 1, this will become alpha to the power minus R, because it is whole to the power minus 1, so it will become alpha to the power minus R. So that is written here whole mod P, because every operation involves mod P. I have taken all the first variables and I've kept it together. So I can cancel M and M to the power minus 1, that is nothing but M to the power minus 1 is nothing but 1 by M. So I can cancel both. In this case also I can cancel both the variables. So what is left? M dash. M dash mod P is left. So we know that every message is less than P minus 1. So M dash mod P will give us M dash itself. So what is M dash now? It is the second message. So having the first message and the ciphertext of two messages, we can obtain what is the message, that is the second message. So no, the above known plaintext attack is not an illustration of the weakness of El-Gamal scheme, but rather a consequence of its improper use. Means it is not you have a vulnerability in the El-Gamal encryption protocol, but it's the improper use. Don't use the same random number in order to encrypt different messages. Next, we'll go through the final application, which makes use of discrete logarithms, that is El-Gamal signature. So signature basically means that during while signing a document, we'll make use of a private key, and for verification of the document, we'll make use of public key. So we'll see how signature works. So as before, let A and PG alpha be the private and the public key of A. So there is a user A whose private key is nothing but A, and the public key is comprised of three components, PG and alpha. So to sign a message M, A does the following. So there is a message M. To sign the document, A need to perform the following. First, he computes the hash H of M on the message. So given a message, he need to compute hash. So to compute the hash, he might use any of the algorithms like MD5, SHA1, any of those hashing algorithms he'll use, and the hash is computed. Second, she chooses the random number R such that R should be within the range 1 to P minus 1. Also R is relatively prime to P minus 1. Okay, it should be within the range P minus 1 and it should be relatively prime to P minus 1. Now a random number is chosen by A. Next, she computes x is equal to g to the power r mod p, that is the r selected in second step. It is taken and she computes the value called as x, that is g to the power r mod p. Next, in the fourth step, he'll compute one more component y. Y is nothing but h of m, that is from the first step, minus a. Now what is a? A is the private key. So a into x, x is the value from the third step, whole into r, that is the random number chosen from second step, to the power minus 1. So there is a use of private key. So mod p minus 1 we need to do. So this complete thing is nothing but y. So there is a private key used here. Okay. Now the signature is nothing but the pair x comma y. So taking the value from third step and fourth step comprises a signature. So where is the private key used? It is used in the fourth step. Okay. So this is how we generate a signature. So the signature verification on the other hand uses alpha and a component of the public key triplet. Okay. To verify the signature, the following checks is performed, that is alpha to the power x into y mod p is done. So alpha is the public key of A. You can see it is a part of the public key of A. Public key comprises of P, G and alpha. So as we say it is a public key, it is known to public. So alpha is known to the receiver also in order to verify the signature. So he will take that value into the power x. X and y is received as a signature for the document. He will take it to the power x into x to the power y mod p is done. So which should be equal to g to the power h mod m mod p. Okay. That is nothing but first in the receiver side, since he receives the document, he need to perform h of m, that is nothing but the hash of the document. Then you have to do g to the power the hash of the document into mod p. Now this value should be equal to the first value whatever you obtain. So this is how the signature verification is done. Now G and P is known, since it's the part of the public key, it is known to the signature verification user as well. Okay, so this is how, if both the quantities are equal, then we can say that the signature is verified and it's an authenticated signature. So it is interesting that a person's Elgamal signature on a given document is not unique always, because the signer can use a different random number to sign the document. Thus the signature produced each time will be different. So there is a multiple signature for a given signer on a given document. That is, as you can see, the random number chosen here, even though you choose the same message, you apply same hashing algorithm, but if a different random number is used for each of the same document, there is a signature value what you get x comma y will be different. It won't be the same, because as you perform your subtraction, the value changes here. Okay, so each time you take a same document, you apply different random number, then the signature value will be different. So that is what is said here. So we are done with the second module. Thanks for watching this video.